The guests had barely settled into their seats when the unthinkable happened. The bride insulted her mother-in-law so viciously that the entire wedding seemed to stop breathing. Crystal lights shimmered above the golden reception hall. Violins played softly, and laughter floated through the air. Yet in one corner, hidden behind towering flower arrangements, Nalia leaned toward her friend and whispered words that sliced sharper than any knife. "She thinks this wedding is about her," Nalia scoffed. "Look at her cheap dress, cheap manners. Honestly, I'm embarrassed she's my mother-in-law. She thought she was unheard. She thought she was safe. But standing directly behind her, frozen in disbelief, was her groom Tendai. His smile collapsed, his hands trembled, his heart shattered, and in that single moment, the celebration turned into a storm waiting to explode. Before we dive deeper into this dramatic story, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? And if you enjoy emotional African folktale dramas, feel free to subscribe so you never miss a new episode. Long before the golden chandeliers and the silk-covered banquet tables of their wedding day, Nalia and Tendai came from two worlds that should never have crossed. Nalia grew up in the kind of wealth that made people bow without realizing it. Their father owned textile factories across 3 countries. Her mother orchestrated charity galas attended by diplomats and business moguls. Their mansion in Harare had wings larger than most hotels. She was used to marble floors, imported perfumes, and being told she deserved only the finest life could offer. Tendai's world was the opposite. His mother, Mama Rudo, raised him alone after his father died young. She sold vegetables in the open market, waking at 4 a.m. every day to secure a stall before the crowds arrived. Their small home had faded paint and squeaky doors, but Mama Rudo filled it with warmth. She used to say, "We may not have much, my son, but we have dignity, and dignity is wealth that never rusts." Tendai carried those words with him everywhere. The two met at a youth entrepreneurship seminar. Nalia arrived in a chauffeur-driven vehicle, elegantly dressed, a tablet in her designer handbag. Tendai came with a worn backpack filled with notes, his shirt carefully ironed by his mother. Nalia barely noticed him at first. He looked like everyone else in the room, but when he spoke during an open discussion, confidently proposing ways to bring small-scale innovation to rural communities, people turned. His intelligence was grounded, sharp, and practical. He wasn't talking to impress. He spoke with sincerity. It was the first time Nalia paused long enough to truly look at him. After the seminar, she approached him with a curious smile. "You speak well," she said, like someone giving out compliments as charity. "And you listen well," he answered with a grin that wasn't intimidated by her background. It intrigued her. She wasn't used to people treating her as an equal, let alone with gentle humor. Their connection grew faster than either expected. They studied together, debated ideas, spent long hours at cafes learning about each other's dreams. Tendai admired her ambition. Nalia admired his grounded strength. They soon became inseparable, at least in their private world. But outside that world, reality lurked. The first time Tendai took Nalia to meet his mother, Mama Rudo welcomed her with excited hands and a trembling smile. "I've heard so much about you," she said warmly. Come in," she served sadza and stew, dishes she had cooked with pride. Nalia barely touched the food. She tried to hide it, but her discomfort seeped through every gesture, the slight wrinkle of her nose, the polite but distant smile, the way she glanced around the small home as though calculating its value. Mama Rudo noticed. Mothers always did. Later that night, she asked Tendai gently, "My son, does she see us? Truly see us? Or only you?" Tendai held his mother's hands. "She's nervous, Mama. She just needs time. But Mama Rudo sensed something deeper and arrogance beneath Nalia's polished charm. As months passed, Tendai remained convinced Nalia's attitude would soften. He didn't see the small signs, the way she rolled her eyes when Mama Rudo called, the way she complained about smelling like the market after visiting the old woman, the way she insisted on restaurants instead of home-cooked meals. To her friends, Nalia began describing Tendai's mother as sweet but terribly simple, words she delivered with a smile that barely masked her disdain. She often joked that once they were married, she would upgrade Mama Rudo's wardrobe and manners. It sounded light-hearted, but its roots were poisonous. Still, Tendai refused to believe anything was wrong. He adored his mother, but he loved Nalia, and love makes people blind in the gentlest, most dangerous ways. Meanwhile, Mama Rudo tried to understand Nalia better. She invited her again, hoping to bond. She offered small gifts, handmade mats, fresh vegetables, even a prayer cloth she had treasured for years. Nalia accepted each item with a polite smile, but once she was out of sight, she whispered to Tendai, "Your mother means well, but I hope she won't expect me to keep these things. They don't match anything in my home." Tendai laughed it off, thinking she was joking. But the sting of those words followed Mama Rudo when she overheard part of the conversation from the kitchen doorway. One afternoon, she tried once more. "Nalia, my daughter, I know we come from different places, but I want us to be a family. If I have ever done anything wrong—" "You haven't done anything wrong," Nalia interrupted, voice calm but cold. "We're just not the same type of people, but it's fine. I'll adjust." To anyone else, it might have sounded harmless, but to Mama Rudo, it was clear. Nalia saw her as something beneath her, something to tolerate, not cherish. Still, Mama Rudo stayed silent. She didn't want her son to suffer. She didn't want to be the reason love failed. As preparations for the wedding began, Nalia's true nature emerged even stronger. She insisted on a 9-layer imported cake, demanded the venue be decorated with rare flowers from South Africa, and rejected every budget-friendly idea Tendai suggested. She said it was to honor the guests, but everyone could sense it was really to prove her status. When Mama Rudo timidly suggested adding traditional elements of family blessing, a dance, a symbolic cloth, Nalia replied, "We can add something small, but let's keep it classy. I don't want the ceremony looking like a village festival." The words stung. Mama Rudo didn't argue, but her eyes dimmed. She felt her son slipping into a world where she no longer belonged. Yet, she told herself, if he's happy, I will endure anything, but endurance has limits. The first public crack appeared during the engagement ceremony. Mama Rudo arrived in a neatly pressed dress she had saved for months to buy. It wasn't flashy, but it was beautiful in its simplicity. Nalia approached her with a sweet smile, kissed her cheek, then murmured to her cousin, not quietly enough, "I wish she'd asked me for advice. That dress is so outdated." The cousin giggled. Mama Rudo heard. She turned away quickly, pretending she had dropped something, trying to hide the tear forming at the corner of her eye. Tendai arrived moments later, embracing both women, oblivious to the tension. Nalia hugged him tightly, her smile flawless. To everyone else, they looked like a perfect couple. But beneath the glittering surface, the cracks were widening, waiting for the right moment to burst open. And that moment would come all on the wedding day, when Nalia's whispered insult wouldn't just break Mama Rudo's heart, it would shatter Tendai's too. In the months leading up to the wedding, Tendai believed everything was unfolding just as it should. He felt grateful that a woman as accomplished and radiant as Nalia had chosen him. Grateful that his mother supported him, or at least pretended to. He convinced himself that the tension he sensed between the two women was simply a matter of adjustment. After all, merging families was never easy. He told himself love would smooth the rough edges, but beneath that hopeful illusion, Nalia's true character slowly began to surface in ways that could no longer be dismissed as mere misunderstandings. It began with small incidents, barely noticeable at first, but corrosive like acid. When Mama Rudo brought gifts, Nalia accepted them, but left them forgotten in the corner of their home. When she cooked meals and invited them over, Nalia always had a reason to decline, suggesting instead that they order something proper. She frequently commented on Mama Rudo's speech, her simplicity, her clothing, her habits, sometimes jokingly, sometimes sharply, but always with the same underlying message: you are beneath me. Still, Tendai didn't see, or rather, he saw but refused to interpret. He was a man in love, and love often transforms flaws into shadows we choose not to notice. But Mama Rudo noticed everything. Her heart ached each time her future daughter-in-law glanced around her small kitchen with thinly veiled distaste. Each time Nalia wiped her hands after touching something in the house, as though she had been contaminated. Each time she whispered to friends on the phone, describing the family she was marrying into with patronizing sweetness. "She's nice, yes," Nalia would say, "but you know, humble origins. I can manage it." Yet despite all of that, Mama Rudo tried to find reasons to forgive. Tendai was her only child, the only surviving piece of her late husband, the only joy she had after years of struggle. Losing him was unthinkable, and so she swallowed the pain. But fate has a way of echoing truth, even when everyone tries to suppress it. One Saturday morning, when Nalia arrived at the market to pick up fresh flowers for a photo shoot, she saw Mama Rudo selling tomatoes and onions, arranging them gently on her wooden stall. The old woman looked tired but peaceful, humming to herself. Instead of greeting her, Nalia hesitated, then walked past without a word, clutching her handbag tightly, as though afraid someone might see her talking to a market vendor. Mama Rudo noticed, her smile fading for a moment before she forced it back. Later that night, she told Tendai, "I think Nalia is ashamed of me." Tendai frowned. "Mama, don't say that. She loves you. She's just shy sometimes." "No, my son," Mama Rudo whispered softly. "Shy people smile. Shy people greet. Your fiancé walked past me today like a stranger she didn't want to know." Tendai's shoulders tensed, defensive, protective. "Mama, maybe she didn't see you?" Mama Rudo looked at him with a sadness he couldn't decipher. "I was right in front of her. He didn't know what to say, so he said nothing." That silence widened the unwanted distance between mother and son. Meanwhile, Nalia grew increasingly possessive. She disliked how close Tendai was to his mother. Anytime he mentioned visiting her, Nalia's voice sharpened ever so slightly. "You're going again? Didn't you just see her last week? She needs help fixing the roof," he would say. "She always needs something," Nalia muttered. Tendai brushed it off, but the sting remained. He didn't tell his mother about these comments, afraid it would add more weight to her already burdened heart. And still Mama Rudo tried, inviting Nalia to cook together, offering to teach her a traditional family recipe, suggesting they spend time bonding. Every attempt was met with excuses or polite distance. One day, determined to bridge the gap, Mama Rudo invited Nalia to her home to help prepare dinner for a family gathering. Nalia reluctantly agreed. When she arrived, the small living room was warm and filled with the scent of stew simmering on the stove. Mama Rudo greeted her with open arms, eager to find common ground. "Would you help me chop the vegetables, my daughter?" Nalia forced a smile, took the cutting board, and began slicing reluctantly. But midway, She frowned, examining the knife. "This is so old," she said. "Doesn't cut properly at all." "It's what I have," Mama Rudo replied gently. "It's served me well for many years." "That's exactly the problem," Nalia murmured quietly. "Not quietly enough. Everything here is so outdated." Mama Rudo paused. "I do what I can," she said, her voice trembling. "I raised my son with this kitchen." "Well," Nalia sighed, "we'll have to upgrade everything once we're married. I can't imagine living like this." She said it with the tone of someone commenting on weather carelessly, casually, but the words pierced like thorns. Mama Rudo looked away, swallowing the lump in her throat. She didn't reply. She simply resumed cooking, heart heavy, eyes dampened with unshed tears. Later that evening, when Nalia stepped outside to take a call, one of the neighbors overheard her. "No, I'm not trying to be rude," Nalia said impatiently, "but his mother is so simple, I can't deal with it. After the wedding, Tendai will have to understand that I can't constantly be around her." The neighbor, shocked, pretended to water her plants while listening. She knew Mama Rudo well, knew how much she loved her son, how excited she had been to welcome Nalia into their family. Hearing such words felt like betrayal. Rumors began weaving their way through relatives and neighbors. People whispered, speculated, exchanged glances. Some were sympathetic toward Mama Rudo, others were simply entertained by the drama unfolding. But Tendai remained blissfully unaware. When he and Nalia met later that night, she kissed him sweetly, smiling as though she were the perfect bride-to-be. He saw only love. He didn't see the cracks forming behind her polished mask. As the wedding drew nearer, tensions intensified. Nalia began criticizing every suggestion Mama Rudo made. She dismissed cultural traditions, rejected simple gestures, and insisted on modernizing everything. "This wedding is going to represent who I am," she said firmly. "And who we are as a family," Tendai added. "Exactly," she replied, though her definition of family clearly did not include his mother. One afternoon, Mama Rudo gathered the courage to speak to Nalia privately. "My daughter," she began gently, "I know I am not perfect, but I love my son deeply, and I want to be part of your lives with peace in my heart. If there is anything I have done to offend you, you haven't offended me," Nalia interrupted, her tone polite but icy. "We just come from different worlds. I'm trying to adjust." The words were wrapped in courtesy, but served with disdain. It was a soft blow with a sharp blade. Mama Rudo nodded, understanding more from what was unsaid than what was spoken. When she left the room, thinking she had closed the door fully, Nalia turned to her friend on the phone and whispered, "She's exhausting, so needy and emotional. I swear, once we're married, I need boundaries. I'm not going to live my life babysitting a poor old market woman." The words soaked into the walls of the house like poison. A young niece who had been playing nearby heard everything. She froze, unsure whether to tell anyone. Children understand tone long before they understand politics. She knew cruelty when she heard it. Later, she ran home and whispered to her mother, "Auntie Nalia doesn't like Grandma Rudo. She said very mean things." More whispers spread. But the biggest storm was yet to come, the one that would break hearts not in private, but in front of the entire world on the wedding day. The final weeks leading up to the wedding became a whirlwind of preparations, fittings, guest lists, flower selections, cake tastings, choreographies, and endless decisions that seemed to fill every waking minute. Tendai was excited but exhausted. Nalia, on the other hand, seemed to thrive in the chaos. She enjoyed every detail, every moment she could control, every opportunity to display the grandeur she believed she deserved. To her, the wedding was more than a ceremony, it was a showcase, a statement, a stage where the world would see her shine. She wanted nothing less than perfection, and perfection, to her, meant extravagance. At the first planning meeting, she declared, "We need the venue draped with silk curtains from top to bottom, and I want crystal chandeliers imported, not rented." The event planner blinked. "Imported chandeliers for one night?" "Exactly," Nalia said. "It has to be unforgettable." Tendai gave a small, unsure smile. "Honey, that might be a bit Tendai." She cut in warmly but sharply. "This is our once-in-a-lifetime moment. We're doing it properly." The planner scribbled notes, trying to hide her discomfort. Meanwhile, Mama Rudo sat quietly in the corner of the room, clutching her handbag, feeling smaller than she ever had. She had been invited to the planning session at Tendai's insistence. "Mama, you're part of this. I want your input." But Nalia had no intention of allowing her to influence anything. Whenever Mama Rudo opened her mouth to contribute, Nalia gently placed her hand over the woman's wrist and said, "Don't worry, Mama. We've got everything covered. You can just relax." It was polite, respectful even, but dismissive, excluding. At one point the planner asked, "Would you like to incorporate any traditional elements from Tendai's family? Maybe a dance or blessing?" Nalia hesitated for a fraction of a second before smiling brightly. "We'll add something small, but it needs to be subtle. Nothing too rustic." Tendai frowned slightly, but before he could respond, Nalia added, "Darling, you know what I mean. We want the wedding to look elegant in the photos. We can't turn it into a village festival." The words hit Mama Rudo harder than Nalia realized. She lowered her eyes, her heart sinking. The traditions she cherished were not rustic to her. They were sacred, symbols of her family's history, pieces of her late husband's memory. Tendai noticed the sadness in his mother's face, but Nalia quickly moved on to discussing fireworks, violinists, and a 7-course menu. He didn't want conflict, so he stayed silent. Silence often protects peace, but at a cost. Days later, Nalia faced a minor crisis during her dress fitting. The designer had created an elegant gown with intricate beadwork, but Nalia insisted the beads weren't sparkly enough. She demanded a full redo despite the wedding being only 3 weeks away. When the designer hesitated, explaining the tight schedule, Nalia snapped, "I'm paying for excellence, not excuses." Tendai arrived just in time to hear the tail end of her outburst. He tried to ease the tension by offering to help, but Nalia brushed him off. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under," she said, tears threatening to fall. "Everyone expects perfection." He pulled her close, comforting her, unaware of the roots of these expectations, unaware that the person she wanted to impress was not him, not even the guests, but her own ego. Meanwhile, Mama Rudo worked quietly behind the scenes, trying to prepare her traditional gift-of-family heirloom bracelet made of gold beads and cowrie shells passed down from her grandmother. She polished it every day, imagining the look on Nalia's face when she presented it at the engagement dinner. "It may not be fancy," she prayed softly, "but may it bring warmth and protection to her." She did not know that Nalia had other thoughts about simple gifts. At the engagement dinner, when Mama Rudo handed her the bracelet, Nalia smiled sweetly, hugging her and thanking her in front of everyone. Photos were taken, compliments were exchanged, but later that evening, in the powder room, Nalia complained to her best friend, "Honestly, look at this thing. It's cute for a museum. But she expects me to wear it? At the wedding? No chance." Unfortunately for Nalia, a young cousin was fixing her hair near the sink and overheard everything. The child's eyes widened. Her loyalty was fierce. She adored Mama Rudo as though she were her own grandmother. She quietly slipped out of the room, heart pounding, unsure if she should tell anyone. Meanwhile, Tendai remained blissfully unaware of his fiancée's remarks. He believed their wedding would mark the beginning of harmony, unity, and healing between the two women he loved. Mama Rudo, still hopeful, believed the same, though she feared her hope was slowly dying. As the final week approached, tension lurked under every surface. During a rehearsal dinner, Nalia commented loudly about the venue's decorations. "I wish we had gone with the luxury package. This looks a bit basic." Tendai's aunt shifted uncomfortably. "My dear, this hall is one of the finest in the city." Nalia forced a smile. "Of course, it's fine. It just lacks sparkle." The room grew silent, eyes glancing awkwardly at one another. In her attempt to soothe the embarrassment she had caused, Nalia reached out to Tendai's mother's arm and said, "Mama, what do you think? Should we add more gold elements so it looks expensive?" Mama Rudo stiffened at the word expensive, hearing the unspoken judgment in it. Expensive was better. Expensive meant worthy, and anything less was not enough. "No, my daughter," she replied gently. "It is good as it is." Nalia shrugged and turned away, whispering something to her friend that caused them both to giggle. Yet even then, Mama Rudo prayed silently, "Let love guide them. Let love guide me." But not everyone was as forgiving. A few relatives had now witnessed enough to begin murmuring behind closed doors. They didn't want to interfere, but they felt something was wrong. One uncle even pulled Tendai aside, saying cautiously, "My boy, are you sure?" Tendai smiled, brushing it off. "You worry too much." But the truth was beginning to creep into his mind. Small doubts, small moments of discomfort he couldn't quite explain. Still, he chose hope. Hope is powerful. Hope sustains even when evidence warns otherwise. The final days approached like a rising tide, pulling everyone toward the inevitable explosion. On the last night before the wedding, Mama Rudo sat alone in her room, staring at the bracelet she planned to give Nalia again during the ceremony. She prayed for peace, for unity, for acceptance. She prayed that her son would be happy, that he would never have to choose between the two women he loved most. But she also prayed for strength, sensing a storm on the horizon. And Nalia, oblivious to that storm, rehearsed her makeup and hair one last time, turning her head in the mirror, admiring the glittering tiara on her head. "This wedding will be perfect," she whispered. She had no idea perfection would crumble the moment her whispered insult venom hidden behind a smile slipped into the ears of the one man she thought was too blinded by love to ever hear the truth. The morning of the engagement ceremony dawned bright and windswept, the kind of day that should have promised joy. Birds chattered on tree branches, the sun spilled gold across the sky, and a light breeze danced through the garden where the celebration would be held. It should have felt perfect. It should have been a day of unity. But beneath the cheerful surface, tension simmered like water just before it boils. Nalia woke early, excitement buzzing under her skin, not the excitement of becoming part of a new family, but the excitement of being the center of attention. She bathed in scented oils, applied expensive makeup, and slipped into a shimmering emerald gown that hugged her figure. As she admired herself in the mirror, she whispered, "Flawless," before turning away with a confident smile. Tendai arrived at her family estate shortly after, dressed in a crisp suit. He carried a bouquet of flowers for her mother and a box of handmade sweets for her father. His upbringing had taught him humility, gratitude, and respect. To him, this day was meaningful, sacred. When he saw Nalia walking down the staircase, he froze for a moment, admiring, breathless. "You look beautiful," he murmured. She smiled sweetly and kissed his cheek. "Of course I do." The guests began arriving soon after. Nalia's relatives pulled up in luxury cars, stepping out in expensive attire. Tendai's family came in modest vehicles, but with warm hearts and genuine smiles. The contrast was visible, almost symbolic. two worlds colliding, one glittering with excess, the other glowing with sincerity. Mama Rudo arrived in a simple but elegant peach dress she had spent months saving for. She had gone to 3 different tailors to make sure it fit perfectly. As she stepped out of the car, her fingers trembled with nervous pride. She clutched a small gift for Nalia hand-woven cloth she had stitched herself. It carried blessings embroidered into every thread. Her late mother had taught her that when giving, the heart mattered more than the price tag. She approached Nalia with a shy smile. "My daughter," she said gently, "I made this for you. May it bring protection and warmth in your new home." Nalia stretched her lips into a polite smile and accepted the cloth. "Oh, thank you, Mama," she said. But the moment Mama Rudo turned away to greet another relative, Nalia whispered to her cousin under her breath, "What am I supposed to do with this thing? It looks like something from the 1970s. Her cousin stifled a laugh. "Maybe use it as a tablecloth," Nalia snickered. "Even my tables deserve better." Unfortunately, her voice wasn't as quiet as she thought. 2 aunts from Tendai's side had walked up behind her, ready to compliment her gown. They stopped abruptly. Their smiles faded. One of them exchanged a pained glance with the other, and both stepped away without a word. Nalia didn't even notice. Inside the large garden tent, the ceremony began with soft music and speeches. Tendai's uncles praised the union. Nalia's mother gave a heartfelt blessing. Everyone clapped politely. But the real fracture came halfway through. During a break in the program, as people mingled around the tables, Nalia's friends gathered around her, admiring her gown and jewelry. The girls whispered, giggled, and gestured toward the guests from Tendai's side. One friend commented, "It's so sweet how his family is trying. They look adorable." Nalia smirked and flicked her hair. "Honestly, I told Tendai they should have asked me for wardrobe help. They're good people, but fashion isn't their strength." Her friends laughed. Another leaned in, whispering, "That dress his mother is wearing, she probably thinks it's stylish." Nalia chuckled, her voice dripping with arrogance. "She means well, but let's be real, it's outdated. I wish she'd let me help her pick something less dull. I hope people don't think we're related yet." The words were venom, wrapped in silk. And this time, they fell directly into the ears of someone who mattered, Mama Rudo herself. She had walked up quietly behind them, carrying a tray of sweets she had brought as a contribution to the celebration. When she heard Nalia's voice, she froze. The tray wobbled in her hands. Her heart clenched. Her breath caught. A single piece of sweet fell from the tray and hit the floor with a soft thud. Nalia turned, startled. Her eyes widened for a split second, but then she quickly composed herself, putting on a sweet smile. "Oh, Mama, I didn't see you there." Mama Rudo didn't say a word. Her eyes glistened, not with anger, but with hurt so deep it stole her breath. I brought these for the guests," she said faintly, voice trembling. She placed the tray on the table and stepped back. Nalia panicked for a moment, but only about appearances. She immediately nudged her friends and forced a cheerful laugh. She misunderstood, okay? We were talking about something else, but her friends didn't look convinced. Across the room, Tendai's aunt approached Mama Rudo and quietly asked, "Are you all right?" Mama Rudo forced a weak smile. "I'm fine. It's her day. I don't want trouble." Her voice cracked on the last word. Despite her effort to remain composed, a single tear escaped and slid down her cheek. She wiped it quickly, hoping no one else had seen. But someone had Tendai's little niece, the same girl who had overheard Nalia before. The child tugged her grandmother's hand. "Grandma, is she being mean to you again?" Mama Rudo hugged the child quickly. "Shh, it's nothing." Yet pain has a way of hanging in the air, visible even to those who cannot explain it. A few minutes later, Tendai arrived with a radiant smile, oblivious to the storm. "Mama, Mom, I want to introduce you to some of Nalia's relatives." Mama Rudo straightened her shoulders and forced herself to smile. Of course, my son. Nalia watched them from across the tent. She couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, her careless words had been heard. But she pushed the thought away. She told herself Mama Rudo was too meek to say anything. Then, while the guests settled for the dinner portion of the ceremony, Nalia slipped into a small lounge room with her cousin to touch up her makeup. The moment the door closed behind them, she sighed dramatically. I swear, Tendai's family is going to drain me before the actual wedding even happens. Her cousin nodded sympathetically. Just be patient. You're marrying him, not them. Well, Nalia muttered, they're part of the deal. But honestly, I wish his mother would try harder. Her dress looks like it was bought from a roadside market. She laughed, and once again someone heard. A young waiter standing near the doorway, arranging drinks, stiffened. He knew Mama Rudo well. She bought vegetables from his mother's stall every week. She was a kind woman, a good woman. Hearing Nalia mock her felt like witnessing a cruelty he couldn't defend himself against. He turned away, biting his tongue. Later, he would whisper what he heard to another staff member. Little by little, the truth trickled through the gathering like drops of rain before a storm. But storms do not always announce themselves gently. Sometimes, they wait. Wait for the moment all pride, all arrogance, all hidden malice slips into the open. And that moment was coming faster than anyone realized. For now, the engagement dinner ended with laughter, music, clinking glasses, and forced smiles. But underneath the glow of celebration, hearts had been wounded, trust had been shaken, and people had begun to see the real Nalia. And soon, so would Tendai. The days following the engagement ceremony drifted forward. But the atmosphere around both families remained strangely heavy, as if a shadow had settled over the celebration and refused to leave. Gossip spread in hushed tones, whispers fluttered from one relative to another, and although no one confronted Nalia directly, the polite distance people kept around her was unmistakable. She noticed it, but instead of questioning her own behavior, she convinced herself the issue lay elsewhere. They're intimidated by me, she told her best friend during a brunch outing. I mean, it's natural. My family is wealthy, influential. They probably feel out of place. Her friend nodded, enabling her delusion. Just act sweet at the wedding and they'll warm up. But sweetness was not a language Nalia spoke naturally, especially not with Mama Rudo. 2 days later, Mama Rudo decided to try again. Despite the hurt she had endured, she still longed for peace. She still clung to the hope that if she humbled herself enough, if she approached Nalia with sincerity, things might improve. Love for a child often makes a mother attempt the impossible. She arrived at Nalia's home early in the morning, carrying a basket of fresh vegetables from the market. She had picked them before sunrise, thinking she could help prepare a meal for the couple. She wore a modest dress and wrapped her hair neatly, wanting to present herself well. When Nalia answered the door, her smile was polite but hollow, more of a courtesy than a welcome. "Oh, Mama," she said, "you didn't have to come this early. I thought I could help with breakfast," Mama Rudo said softly, lifting the basket. "I brought some fresh tomatoes and greens." Nalia hesitated for a split second. "Ah, how thoughtful," she said, though her tone lacked warmth. "You can place them on the counter. My housekeeper will sort them." Mama Rudo followed her inside, setting the basket gently on the counter. She looked around the polished kitchen marble counters. Stainless steel appliances, decorations of glass and silver. It was beautiful, far beyond anything she had ever owned. She felt both admiration and distance. "Would you like some tea?" she asked, smiling gently. "Oh no, Mama. I already had my morning smoothie," Nalia replied, glancing at her phone. An awkward silence filled the air. Finally, gathering courage, Mama Rudo spoke. "Nalia, my daughter, I know things have been difficult between us. I want us to get along. I'm trying." Nalia exhaled sharply, leaning against the counter. "Mama, it's not that we don't get along. It's just, we're different people. We come from different worlds. These things take time." Her words were correct in structure, but her voice lacked empathy. She was speaking to end the conversation, not mend it. Still, Mama Rudo nodded. "I understand. I only hope one day you will see me as a second mother. I have no daughter of my own. I would like to love you the same." For a moment, just a moment, Nalia felt something like guilt tug at her chest, but it passed quickly. "I appreciate it," she said curtly, "but I think we should respect each other's boundaries." Mama Rudo blinked. "Boundaries? Yes. I don't want misunderstandings. Some things you suggest, they don't fit the lifestyle Tendai and I want. But don't worry. After the wedding, we'll figure things out." Though politely worded, the message was clear. You will not be part of our life in the way you hope. It was a soft rejection, delivered with a smile. Before Mama Rudo could respond, Nalia's phone rang. She answered immediately, speaking animatedly. "Yes, yes. The gold chairs arrived? Perfect. And the imported roses? Wonderful." Mama Rudo stood quietly, letting the words swirl around her, words filled with glamour, status, extravagance. Words that did not belong to her world. After ending the call, Nalia turned back. "Mama, I have a meeting with the decorator. I hope you don't mind." "Oh," Mama Rudo murmured. "Of course not. I will go." Nalia nodded briskly. "Thank you for coming. Not stay. Not, let's talk more. Just thank you for coming." Mama Rudo stepped outside, her basket empty, her heart heavier than when she had arrived. As she walked down the driveway, she whispered a quiet prayer, not for herself, but for her son. "Lord, please open his eyes before it's too late." Inside, Nalia watched her from the window, sighing in relief once she had left. "She's so emotional," she muttered to herself. "Everything feels like a drama to her." But the real drama was just beginning. Later that afternoon, Nalia met her friends at a cafe. As they sipped coffee, one friend asked, "So how's the future mother-in-law?" Nalia rolled her eyes. "Same as always, trying too hard. She brought vegetables today, as if I'm going to start cooking like some village housewife." The friends laughed. "I mean, I get it," Nalia continued. "She wants to feel useful. But she needs to understand I'm not marrying into poverty. I'm upgrading their son's life, not the other way around." What she didn't realize was that the waiter standing behind her pouring water into glasses was the same young man who had overheard her at the engagement party. His hands paused mid-air. He clenched his jaw, setting down the pitcher quietly. When Nalia left, he approached an older woman sitting at another table, Tendai's cousin. "Auntie," he whispered, "I don't want to cause trouble, but you should know what she said." Bit by bit, the truth spread. Yet Tendai remained unaware of the growing whispers. That evening, he returned home with flowers for Nalia. "I thought these might brighten your day," he said. "Oh, baby," she cooed, smiling. "They're lovely." As he hugged her, she melted into the affection. She loved how he adored her. She loved feeling adored. He didn't know this version of her, the one who mocked his mother, belittled her efforts, and treated her kindness as inconvenience. He knew only the Nalia who smiled at him, who touched his face gently, who dreamed of a future together. His love shielded him from the truth, but that shield was thinning. The turning point arrived a week later, when Tendai overheard two relatives whispering at a family gathering. "I feel bad for Rudo," one said. "Nalia treats her terribly." "Yes," the other agreed. If Tendai knew half of what's been said. Their voices trailed off as Tendai stepped closer. He approached them. "Is something wrong?" The women exchanged quick glances. No, one said too quickly. "Just talking." Tendai frowned. Talking about what? But before they could answer, Nalia walked in, grabbing his hand and pulling him away. "Darling, come taste the cake samples." The moment broke. The whispers silenced themselves. But the seed of doubt had been planted. 2 days later, Mama Rudo mustered her courage to visit Tendai privately. She invited him to her small home and served him his favorite stew. He ate quietly, noticing the dark circles under her eyes. "Mama," he said softly, "you haven't been yourself lately." Mama Rudo hesitated. She didn't want to break his heart. She didn't want to be the reason his marriage fell apart before it began. She didn't want to poison his happiness. But she also did not want to lie. "My son," she whispered, taking his hands. "I didn't want to tell you this, but I fear you are blind to something that may bring you pain." Tendai's stomach nodded. "Mama, what are you talking about?" "Nalia," Mama Rudo began, then paused. Tears filled her eyes. "She does not respect me, my son. She does not see me as family. She speaks of me in hurtful ways. I have heard her. Others have heard her." Tendai felt the air leave his lungs. "No," he said instinctively. "Mamano, she loves you. You're mistaken." Mama Rudo shook her head. "I am not mistaken. I only stayed silent because I didn't want to break your joy. But I cannot watch you walk into a marriage built on disrespect. I fear for you." He pulled his hands away gently, struggling to breathe. His mind refused to accept her words, yet his heart trembled. "Please," his mother whispered brokenly, "just look with your own eyes. Listen with your own ears. That is all I ask." He left her house shaken, confused, and tormented. But he did not confront Nalia. Not yet. He needed to observe, to see the truth for himself, and the truth was coming. Loud, clear, cruel, on the wedding day where everything she had tried to hide would finally slip into the open. The final days before the wedding unfolded with the deceptive calm of a sky just moments before a storm. The invitations had been sent. The venue had been dressed in silk and gold, and the guest list boasted everyone from local politicians to childhood neighbors. To the outside world, everything looked perfect. To Tendai, it was supposed to be perfect, his dream of uniting the woman he loved with the mother he cherished. But after the conversation with Mama Rudo, a quiet unease stirred inside him, shadowing every thought. He replayed his mother's trembling voice in his mind, her fear, her sadness, her plea. Just look with your own eyes. He wanted to believe his mother was mistaken. He wanted to believe Nalia's heart was pure. Yet the seeds of doubt had rooted deep. He found himself studying Nalia more closely, her tone, her gestures, the moments when she thought no one was watching. And what he saw unsettled him. It happened first when they were finalizing seating arrangements. He suggested placing his mother near the front with honored guests. Nalia's smile tightened. "Oh, love, wouldn't she be more comfortable with your aunts? She'll enjoy chatting with them. She should be in the front," Tendai said gently. "She's my mother." Nalia sighed softly. "I just don't want the seating to feel unbalanced." "Unbalanced how?" Tendai asked. She hesitated, then chose her words carefully. "Well, your family is humble. My parents have invited high-profile guests. I don't want anyone feeling out of place." The sentence stung him, though she delivered it sweetly. "My mother won't feel out of place," he replied quietly. "She's proud of who she is." Nalia touched his cheek, smiling. "Of course she is. But darling, I'm trying to make sure the event flows visually and socially. You know how weddings are. He didn't argue further, but the moment lodged in his heart like a thorn. Later that evening, Nalia met with her friends at a luxurious spa to unwind from the pressure. Tendai accompanied her to drop her off, planning to pick her up later. When he returned early, hoping to surprise her, he overheard laughter coming from the private lounge room near the entrance. And then Mama Rudo brought vegetables again. One friend giggled. Does she think you're opening a kitchen at home? Nalia's voice followed, dripping with amusement. She's trying so hard to be relevant. It's cute, honestly. A little sad, but cute. So, do you think she'll behave at the wedding? Oh, she'll behave, Nalia answered. But I told Tendai she needs boundaries. I swear, if she expects me to run around doing village traditions, I'm leaving. Laughter erupted. Tendai froze in place. The words slammed into his chest. Village traditions, boundaries, cute, sad. These were not the words of love, not the words of respect. They were words of condescension, soaked in scorn. Before he could decide what to do, Nalia's laughter floated out again light, carefree, unaware of the damage being done. He stepped back quietly, his heart pounding painfully. For the first time, he saw the pieces match in the picture his mother had tried to describe. He did not confront Nalia then. He needed time to think, time to breathe, time to gather the courage to face the growing truth. He drove home silently, his hands gripping the steering wheel. The image of his mother's sorrow etched into his thoughts. Meanwhile, Nalia remained blissfully unaware of the storm she had just triggered. She left the spa feeling triumphant, pampered, and pleased with herself. She believed everything was under control, her wedding, her image, her future. She believed she had Tendai fully wrapped around her finger. But arrogance has a way of blinding people to their own cracks. The following day, the extended families gathered for a pre-wedding rehearsal at the reception venue. The hall buzzed with activity. Decorators adjusting flowers, musicians tuning instruments, and caterers testing their setups. Nalia swept into the room in a white rehearsal dress, commanding attention. Tendai followed quietly behind her, his expression unreadable. Mama Rudo stood near the edge of the hall, dressed simply but neatly, hands clasped in front of her. She looked nervous yet hopeful. She wanted today to be a fresh start. She prayed yesterday's pain would not linger. Good afternoon, Mama, Nalia greeted her, kissing her cheek lightly. The gesture was polite but lacked sincerity. I hope you're excited. Very excited, my daughter, Mama Rudo replied gently. It's a blessing to witness my son's wedding. Nalia smiled briefly before turning away to bark instructions to the coordinator. Tendai approached his mother quietly. Mama, he whispered, are you all right? She turned to him with a soft, fragile smile. As long as you are happy, I am happy. But Tendai heard something new, a strain beneath her voice, a weariness he had never noticed before. As the rehearsal began, Nalia practiced her entrance, her posture, her smile. She corrected everyone around her, bridesmaids, ushers, even the officiant. People tolerated it with tight smiles, understanding that brides often became demanding before their wedding day. But there is a difference between demanding and disrespectful. When one of Tendai's younger cousins accidentally stepped on the edge of her dress, Nalia snapped, "Be careful. This isn't a flea market cloth." The girl gasped, her cheeks flushing with humiliation. Mama Rudo stepped forward immediately. "My daughter, she didn't mean, I know she didn't mean it," Nalia interrupted sharply. But mistakes like that ruin weddings. The room fell silent. Tendai inhaled slowly, struggling to keep his composure. He walked toward Nalia and placed a gentle hand on her arm. "She's just a child," he whispered. "So she should watch her step," Nalia whispered back. Tendai's eyes darkened, the shadow in his heart deepened further, but the breaking point had not yet arrived. That would come soon, far sooner than anyone expected. After the rehearsal, while guests mingled near the refreshment tables, Nalia pulled her closest friend aside. They walked toward a dim hallway near the storage room. Nalia's voice lowered, but not enough. "This entire day was exhausting," she muttered. "His family makes everything feel so cheap, I swear. If it weren't for Tendai's looks and career potential, none of this would be worth it." Her friend gasped. "Nalia!" "What?" Nalia shrugged. "I'm just being honest. I love him, but his family..." She rolled her eyes. "Let's just say I'm doing more charity than partnership here." She laughed lightly. And that was when the young flower girl, the same child who had overheard her before, peeked around the corner, her heart aching. She didn't understand all the words, but she understood the tone. She understood the coldness. She understood the mockery. She ran quickly toward the ballroom, toward Mama Rudo, who was speaking quietly with a group of relatives. "Grandma! Rudo!" the girl cried softly as she hugged her. "It's happening again. She's saying mean things again." Mama Rudo's smile faltered, but she didn't cry. She didn't gasp. She simply closed her eyes for a long moment and breathed deep, painful breaths. Then she opened her eyes and whispered, "Thank you, my child." She didn't tell Tendai. Not yet. She didn't want to break him right before the wedding, but she could feel it. This wasn't something that could remain hidden forever. And she was right, because as the rehearsal came to an end, someone else overheard Nalia this time, someone whose heart had already begun to crack. Tendai. He had been walking through the hallway, searching for Nalia, ready to suggest they take a moment together. Instead, he found her voice echoing against the walls. "I'm doing charity. Once we're married, I'll make sure his mother understands her place." He stopped walking, stopped breathing. This time, there was no doubt, no misunderstanding, no whispered rumor. This was the truth, sharp, unfiltered, undeniable. Tendai stood there in the dim hallway, his world collapsing silently around him. Tomorrow would be the wedding. Tomorrow he would stand before hundreds of people and vow his life to a woman who despised the person he loved most. And in that moment, he vowed something else to himself. If she showed this cruelty again, even once, he would not stay silent. Tomorrow, the world would see everything. Tomorrow, the truth would break free, and the wedding day would shatter into pieces. The wedding morning arrived with the kind of brilliance poets wrote about, sunlight spilling like liquid gold across the manicured lawns of the grand venue, a gentle breeze lifting the silk ribbons adorning every archway, soft choral music humming through hidden speakers. It was perfect, breathtaking, the culmination of months of stressful planning and extravagant expenses. To everyone present, it looked like a fairy tale. But beneath the beauty, a quiet dread throbbed in Tendai's chest. His heart was heavy, weighted with the echoes of Nalia's cruel words from the rehearsal. He had barely slept the night before, lying awake in his childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling as the truth replayed again and again in his mind. "I'm doing charity. She needs to understand her place. Cheap, outdated." He tried to convince himself he had misheard. He tried to wrap excuses around her words the way people wrap bandages around deep wounds. She was stressed. Weddings were overwhelming. She didn't mean it like that. But excuses have limits, and he had reached his. As he dressed that morning, slipping into his cream-colored suit, fastening the cufflinks his father once wore, he looked at himself in the mirror and whispered, "Please, God, just show me the truth." Meanwhile, in another part of the venue, Nalia prepared with the confidence of a queen. She sat in front of a large mirror framed by golden bulbs as three stylists fluttered around her, curling her hair, painting her lips, adjusting the jeweled crown atop her head. She admired herself for long moments, tilting her chin to catch every angle. "I look stunning," she murmured. "You look like royalty," her best friend added. Nalia smiled, pleased. She didn't think about the responsibilities of marriage, the merging of families, the vow she would take. Her mind circled only one thing: the image of perfection she would broadcast to the world today. When the stylist handed her the traditional bracelet Mama Rudo had gifted her the night before, meant to be worn during the ceremony, Nalia frowned slightly. "This again?" she muttered. Her friend whispered, "Just wear it for the ceremony. You can take it off after the pictures." Nalia sighed dramatically and slipped it on without enthusiasm. If she had known how many eyes noticed her lack of gratitude, if she had known how many hearts it quietly disappointed, she might have pretended better, but she didn't. Across the venue, Mama Rudo stood near the entrance, clutching her purse with trembling hands. She wore a beautiful lilac dress this time new, carefully chosen, sewn with love. She had spent her savings on it, wanting her son to beam with pride when he saw her. Her eyes glistened as she watched the guests arrive. She smiled gently at each familiar face, nodding gratefully whenever someone commented on how radiant she looked. But behind her soft smiles lay a storm of emotions. She prayed silently, "Lord, please protect my son. Please give him strength today." Just then, her sister Aunt Rutendo approached her. "Are you all right, Rudo?" she asked softly. Mama Rudo nodded weakly. "I am trying. You shouldn't force yourself to hide your pain. I don't want to ruin his day," she whispered. "Let him have his wedding." Aunt Rutendo squeezed her hand, but her eyes burned with protective anger. "If she hurts you again today, I won't stay silent." "Please," Mama Rudo begged. "Not today. Let the truth reveal itself in God's time." Unbeknownst to both women, the truth was already preparing to reveal itself in the most dramatic way imaginable. As the ceremony began, violins played sweetly while guests filled the rows of decorated chairs. The air buzzed with excitement. Tendai stood at the altar, stiff but composed, breathing slowly as he waited for Nalia to walk down the aisle. His eyes scanned the crowd until they found his mother. She smiled at him, proud, hopeful, and he forced himself to smile back. When the doors opened, everyone rose to their feet. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Nalia stepped into the aisle like a goddess draped in white light, her gown shimmering with diamonds, her veil trailing behind her like a river of stars. Cameras clicked, voices whispered, but Tendai stood frozen. She was beautiful, yes, stunning even, but he couldn't unhear her cruelty. Her beauty no longer softened the wound she'd carved inside him. Instead, it made the contrast sharper. She reached the altar, took his hands, and smiled warmly. "You look handsome, my love." He forced a quiet, "Thank you." She didn't notice his stiffness. She didn't notice the tightness in his jaw or the redness in his eyes. She was too focused on the guests, on the attention, on the dream she believed she was living. The officiant began the ceremony, his deep voice resonating through the hall. "We are gathered today to unite Tendai and Nalia in holy matrimony." But even as the ceremony unfolded perfectly, the tension inside Tendai coiled tighter. When it came time for the vows, Nalia performed hers flawlessly, sweet, practiced, theatrical. She promised love, respect, and partnership. Her voice trembled with emotion, but everyone could see it was performative. Then it was Tendai's turn. He stared at her for a long moment. The words he had written the previous night sat in his pocket. Yet he knew he couldn't speak them. Not yet. Not with the weight of everything he had seen and heard. Before he could speak, the officiant moved on, thinking Tendai was simply overwhelmed. Soon after, the ceremony concluded. The couple walked back down the aisle as confetti rained down, the crowd cheering. But Tendai's smile never reached his eyes. The reception hall was even more extravagant than the ceremony gold decorations, crystal chandeliers, imported just as Nalia demanded, tables overflowing with food. Music played softly as guests mingled, and it was here, in the glittering chaos of the reception, that everything fell apart. After the first dance, after speeches, after photos, Nalia wandered to a quiet corner with her closest friend, seeking a moment to complain about the small inconveniences she claimed were ruining the vibe. "This whole event is gorgeous," her friend whispered, "but your mother-in-law looks so out of place." Nalia chuckled. "She always does, but as long as she stays in her lane, we're fine." Laughter. Then Nalia leaned closer, lowering her voice, but forgetting that walls have ears, that fate has timing, and that arrogance always overreaches. "I can't believe I have to pretend to like that woman," she said. "Honestly, she's so simple, it's embarrassing. I hope Tendai doesn't expect me to babysit her forever." Her friend covered her mouth, shocked. "Nalia!" "What?" Nalia shrugged. "He's too attached to her, but once we're settled, he'll understand I'm the real future. She's just the past." She didn't know someone stood behind her. She didn't know someone heard every word. She didn't know that someone was Tendai. He froze. The glass in his hand nearly slipped. His heart broke, not for himself, but for the gentle woman who raised him on sacrifice, love, and dignity. Nalia kept talking. "And that bracelet she gave me? I'll hide it after tonight. It ruins the aesthetic." She laughed, and Tendai snapped. "Nalia!" His voice cut through the air like a blade. She turned, startled, her face draining of color when she saw him standing there. "Tendai," she stammered. "I too didn't know you were." He stepped closer, eyes burning with disbelief, pain, and rising fury. That much is clear. Around them, guests turned, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Music softened. Conversations hushed, and for the first time, Nalia felt fear, not of him, but of losing everything she thought she controlled. She reached for him. "Baby, listen," but Tendai stepped back, and the storm began. For a moment, the entire reception hall seemed to freeze, music fading into background murmurs, glasses clinking in slow motion, conversations dissolving into stunned silence. Even the chandeliers, glittering above the crowd, felt as though they had stopped trembling. Everyone's eyes shifted toward the corner where the newlyweds stood facing one another, Tendai rigid as stone, Nalia pale beneath her flawless makeup. "Tendai," Nalia whispered again, forcing out a shaky smile. "You startled me. I was just talking nonsense. You know how girls gossip." He didn't move, didn't blink, didn't soften. "I heard everything," he said, voice low, trembling not with weakness, but with barely contained emotion. Every word. Those words traveled like a shockwave. People turned, glasses paused mid-air. Someone gasped quietly. Nalia swallowed hard. She reached for his arm again. "Baby, please. It's our wedding day. This isn't the time for misunderstandings." Tendai stepped back, her hand hanging in the air. "Misunderstandings?" he asked sharply. "You insulted my mother on the day she prayed for your happiness." His voice cracked, pained and disbelieving. Nalia's mouth opened and closed, panic rising. "Tu didn't mean it that way. I was stressed. I'm sorry if you insulted her yesterday," he cut in, "and the day before and last week, and today." Her breath hitched. She hadn't realized how many times she had been overheard, how many witnesses existed without her knowledge. Tendai continued, his voice heavier than the air around them. "You called her simple, embarrassing, outdated. You mocked her gifts. You mocked her clothes. You mocked her existence." Nalia began shaking her head rapidly. "No, you're twisting it. I was joking. You know I joke like that. Not like that, he said. Not with that tone. Silence again. Thick, crushing. Guests shifted uncomfortably, glancing at one another, unsure whether to intervene or retreat. Nalia's parents stood across the room, stiff as statues, mortified, yet unwilling to step into the fire. Mama Rudo sweet, patient, faithful, Mama Rudo stood a few meters away. The moment her son's voice rose, she instinctively took a step forward, ready to calm him, ready to protect him from his own heartbreak. But Aunt Rutendo gently grabbed her arm, whispering, "Let him speak." Nalia's eyes darted around desperately. "Can we please talk somewhere private? Tendai, please. This should be private," he said bitterly. "But you made it public when you kept insulting her in public spaces, around strangers, around children, around our family." Nalia's friend stepped forward, attempting to intervene. "Maybe we should all take a moment." Tendai held up a hand. "No." The hall stilled again. "Nalia," he said, voice breaking, "do you have any idea what she sacrificed for me? What she endured to raise me? Do you know the nights she went to bed hungry so I could eat? Do you know the dreams she gave up so mine could flourish? Do you know how many times she prayed for God to bring a woman into my life who would love me and cherish me with kindness?" Tears spilled freely down Mama Rudo's cheeks. Her hands trembled at her sides. Nalia's eyes filled too, but for the first time, her tears were not for him, they were for herself. "Tendai," she whispered, "I love you. Do you?" he asked. "Or do you love what I represent? The future I can give you? The image you want to craft?" Her lips parted, but no answer came. Tendai stepped closer, voice quiet but slicing like glass. "If you loved me, you would respect my mother. If you loved me, you would speak of her with dignity. If you loved me, you would not humiliate her." She shook her head frantically. "Baby, I didn't humiliate her intentionally. I swear I didn't mean intention doesn't erase harm," he said sharply. "And you harmed her, over and over." Nalia looked around desperately for anyone to come to her defense, but no one moved, not even her own parents. Her father looked away, ashamed. Her mother wiped her eyes silently. And then, the final blow. Little Toriro, the flower girl, slipped out from behind her aunt and walked forward bravely. Her tiny voice shook as she said, "Uncle Tendai, I heard her too. She said Grandma Rudo isn't good enough." A collective gasp erupted through the hall. Nalia's knees buckled. "Toriro, sweetheart," she stammered, reaching out, but the child stepped back quickly. "I didn't understand everything," the girl whispered, "but I know she said mean things." And Grandma Rudo cried. Mama Rudo covered her face, overwhelmed. Tendai steadied himself, chest rising and falling sharply. "Thank you, Toriro," he murmured. The little girl returned to her mother, who hugged her tightly. Nalia's facade shattered. She fell to her knees, clutching her dress, sobbing openly. "Tendai, please, please listen to me. I was stupid. I was arrogant. I didn't think." "You didn't think because you don't see her," Tendai whispered. "Not as a mother, not as a human being, not as someone worthy." "I can change," she cried, voice breaking painfully. "Please, please don't do this. Not today. Not like this." He closed his eyes. He saw his mother praying with trembling hands. He saw her forcing smiles while hiding tears. He heard her broken voice whispering, "Just look with your own eyes." And he had looked, and he had seen, and the truth hurt more than anything he'd ever known. He opened his eyes again. "You broke something today that I don't know how to fix," he said. Nalia's sobs tore through the hall. "But the worst part," Tendai continued slowly, "is that you broke it not by mistake, but by choice." Her breath shattered in her throat. "I need time," he said simply. Time to think. Time to breathe. Time away from you. Gasps swept through the guests. Nalia reached for him again, but this time he stepped far back. No, he said softly, not right now. Tendai, please, please don't walk away from me. He looked at her for a long, painful moment. Then he turned and walked toward his mother. Mama Rudo's breath shook as her son reached her. She touched his arm gently, silently telling him not to choose her over his marriage, not to hurt himself more. He whispered, voice cracking, I'm sorry, Mama. She pulled him into her arms. No, my son, she whispered. You did not fail. You saw the truth. The room was heavy with emotion, guilt, grief, disbelief, and across the hall on the cold polished floor, the bride remained on her knees, beautiful, broken, and finally facing the consequences of every cruel word she had planted. Tonight was supposed to be her triumph. Instead, it became the night her mask fell off in front of the entire world. Chaos hovered over the reception like a storm cloud refusing to burst. The guests whispered in fractured clusters, casting glances between the heartbroken groom and the crumpled bride on the polished floor. The music had faded, the lights seemed harsher, sharper, and the room felt suddenly too large, too quiet for what had just unfolded. Nalia remained on her knees, her hands trembling as she wiped streaks of mascara from her cheeks. Her breath came in jagged gasps, each inhale a painful reminder of how close she was to losing everything. She had wanted a fairy tale. She had demanded perfection. But fairy tales were not built on cruelty, and perfection was something she had never extended to others. Her best friend knelt beside her, trying to steady her. Nalia, sweetheart, breathe. Just breathe. You can fix this. Nalia shook her head violently, choking out broken sobs. He hates me. Oh God, he hates me. He doesn't hate you, her friend said. He's hurt, very hurt, but you can talk to him, calmly, privately. But Nalia was no longer the composed, elegant woman she had been an hour ago. Her world had crumbled in minutes. She felt exposed, humiliated, stripped of all the shields she once wielded so confidently. Now all she had was raw pain. Across the room, Tendai sat beside his mother, his hand clutching hers like an anchor in the storm. His chest rose and fell rapidly, his heart still pounding with the shock of what he had heard. Though he tried to stay composed, the anguish still flickered in his eyes. Mama Rudo stroked his arm gently. My son, she whispered, don't let anger guide your next steps. What you said was enough. Don't sink lower by acting from a place of hurt. I'm not angry, Mama, he said in a shaky voice. I'm disappointed. I'm heartbroken. I'm ashamed I didn't see it sooner. You loved her, Mama Rudo said softly. That is nothing to be ashamed of. Love is blind, yes, but it is not foolish. It only becomes foolish when we refuse to open our eyes. Those words pierced him yet soothed him at the same time. Meanwhile, Nalia's parents finally rushed toward her. Her mother dropped to her knees and embraced her tightly, horrified that the daughter she raised her pride and joy had become the center of such disgrace. Nalia, her mother whispered urgently, what have you done? Nalia sobbed into her mother's shoulder. Tu didn't mean it. I didn't think. That is the problem, her mother said, her voice trembling with both grief and disappointment. You never thought. You let arrogance replace kindness. You let pride replace humility. And now look, Nalia's father stood behind them, his face heavy and stern. He had never been a loud man, but his silence carried weight. Finally he spoke. You must apologize. Not for show, not for your image. Truly apologize. Nalia nodded frantically. I will. I swear I will. When she stood, her legs shook so badly she nearly fell. With the support of her mother and friend, She took several unsteady steps toward Tendai and Mama Rudo. The hall watched in thick silence. Every tear on her face felt like acid. Every step felt like walking barefoot over broken glass. But she forced herself forward because she knew, deeply, painfully, that she was the one responsible for turning the happiest day of her life into a public disaster. When she reached them, she halted several feet away. She could not bring herself to get closer. She dared not. "Tendai," she whispered. "Mama Rudo." Tendai looked up, his expression drained of warmth. He looked older, suddenly older and wiser in a painful way. Nalia swallowed hard. I'm sorry," she said, "for everything I said, for the disrespect, for the cruelty, for being blind to my own pride." Her voice trembled, but her words were sincere. Mama Rudo met her gaze with soft but wounded eyes. "My daughter," she said gently, "why do you hate me so?" Nalia shook her head violently. I don't hate you. I was just insecure. I wanted to feel above something. It's terrible, I know." I thought her voice broke. I thought looking down on others made me strong, but it only made me small. Tears streamed down her face. Mama Rudo sighed softly, her heart aching. Pain makes people cruel sometimes, but cruelty becomes a habit when not corrected. "I know," Nalia whispered, sobbing, "and I failed. I failed badly. I hurt you. I betrayed your son. I betrayed myself." Some guests wiped their own eyes quietly, but Tendai remained silent. Nalia turned to him, her voice cracking. "Tendai, I love you, more than anything, but I let my pride destroy something precious. I will spend every day fixing it if you let me. I will change. I swear to you, I will change." A long pause stretched between them, heavy and fragile. Finally, Tendai stood. The hall held its breath. He walked closer to her. She trembled. "Nalia," he said quietly, "do you truly understand what you've done?" "Yes," she whispered, "and I will accept whatever consequence you give me." He studied her face, the fragility, the remorse, the shattered pride. "I don't want to destroy you," he said slowly. "I don't want revenge. I loved you deeply, and part of me still does." His voice strained. "But trust is the foundation of everything. You didn't just disrespect my mother. You disrespected my heart." She sobbed harder. I know. He exhaled deeply. "I need time. I can't give you an answer today. Not here. Not in front of everyone." Nalia nodded shakily. "I understand. But one thing," he added, "must happen now." He turned to his mother. "Mama, would you allow her to apologize to you properly? From her heart?" Mama Rudo hesitated, tears shining in her eyes. "Of course." Nalia dropped to her knees again, this time on purpose, willingly. She looked up at Mama Rudo, hands clasped as though in prayer. "I am so deeply sorry," she whispered. "You didn't deserve any of the things I said. You are a good mother, a good woman, and I was too blind and arrogant to see that. Please, please forgive me." The room fell utterly silent. Mama Rudo's chest rose and fell. She stepped forward, placing a trembling hand on Nalia's head. "I forgive you," she whispered, "because forgiveness frees the heart, but forgiveness does not erase what happened. It only gives us a chance to rebuild." Nalia nodded fiercely, tears splashing onto the floor. Tendai swallowed hard, overwhelmed by the moment. He placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "Stand up." She obeyed, shaky and weak. He looked into her eyes, truly looked as though searching for the woman he once believed she was. Then he stepped back. "This night is over," he said quietly. "Tomorrow, we will talk, not as newlyweds, not as enemies, but as two people deciding if a future together is still possible." Her breath trembled. "I'll wait. I'll accept whatever comes." The hall remained silent as the guests slowly began to disperse, some comforting Nalia's parents, others quietly approaching Mama Rudo and Tendai. The celebration was over, the music faded, the cake remained untouched, and the bride, who had once envisioned herself glowing at the center of her kingdom, now stood humbled, stripped of pretense, forced to confront the truth of her own heart. Tonight, the fairy tale ended. Tomorrow, the reckoning would begin. The night ended in fractured pieces, shattered pride, wounded hearts, and a silence that echoed long after the last guest slipped quietly out of the hall. The grand decorations, meant to symbolize joy and unity, now felt like hollow ornaments hanging over a battlefield. The scent of roses and champagne still lingered in the air, mocking the pain that had replaced the celebration. Nalia's gown trailed behind her as she walked aimlessly through the empty reception hall, stepping over fallen petals, abandoned napkins, and the remnants of what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Her feet ached, her makeup had melted into streaks, and her soul felt bruised. Her parents walked behind her, both defeated in their own way. Her mother dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief, while her father walked stiffly, hands behind his back, disappointment heavy in every step. They ushered her into the car waiting outside. As they drove home through the quiet night, neither parent spoke. The silence pressed into Nalia's chest until she couldn't breathe. Finally, she whispered, "Mom, Dad, say something." Her mother swallowed hard. "What do you want us to say, Nalia?" Nalia broke into tears again. "I messed up. I know I did. But it wasn't supposed to go like that. I was stressed." Her father cut her off sharply. "Stress does not reveal lies. It reveals truth." She flinched as if slapped. "Dad, you spoke about that woman, his mother, with contempt, publicly, repeatedly." His voice trembled with restrained fury. "You humiliated us. You humiliated yourself. And you dishonored the man who loves you." Nalia curled inward. She had always respected her father, feared disappointing him. Hearing him speak with such cold disappointment shattered something deep inside her. Her mother added softly, "We raised you to be confident, yes, but not arrogant, not cruel." Nalia sobbed harder. "I know. I'm sorry." Her mother touched her arm. "You've apologized. Now you must prove it." They drove the rest of the way in silence. Meanwhile, Tendai walked Mama Rudo back to her small home. The moonlight followed them, casting soft shadows on the dusty ground. He held her hand tightly, as though grounding himself through her warmth. When they reached her doorstep, she turned to him. "You should go rest, my son," she said gently. "Tomorrow will be a heavy day." He shook his head. "Mama, everything hurts." "I know," she whispered, pulling him into a hug. "You tried to build a bridge. She burned it, but fire can be rebuilt into new life if the soil beneath is fertile." He exhaled shakily. "Do you think she can change?" Mama Rudo hesitated. "People can change, but only when they see their own darkness. Do you think she sees it?" Tonight, she saw the consequences, not the cause. But sometimes, consequences open the eyes. He nodded slowly. "I need clarity. I need space." "You will have it," she said. "Go home. Sleep. Pray. Tomorrow, let your heart guide your steps, not your pain." He kissed her forehead gently. "Good night, Mama. Good night, my son." When Tendai returned to his apartment, the silence felt heavier than before. He removed his suit slowly, staring at the bracelet his mother had gifted Nalia now, resting on his dining table. He didn't know why she left it behind, whether it was shame, forgetfulness, or rejection, but seeing it there hollowed him out further. He sat on the couch, head in his hands, replaying the day, the moments when Nalia laughed at his mother, the whispers he overheard, the shock on the faces of the guests, the innocent voice of little Tariro confirming the truth he had tried to ignore. He loved Nalia once deeply, but love built on blindness was no foundation for marriage. He closed his eyes and whispered into the darkness, "God, what am I supposed to do?" Across town, Nalia curled up on her bed, still wearing her wedding dress. It was wrinkled and stained with tears and smudged makeup. She wanted to take it off, but she couldn't bring herself to move. It felt like removing it would be admitting the day was truly over. Her best friend sat beside her, brushing her hair gently. "Nalia, you need sleep. You need strength for tomorrow." Nalia shook her head weakly. "What if he leaves me? What if this was our last day together?" Her friend hesitated. "It might be, if you don't face what you've done." "I have," Nalia said weakly. "No," her friend said firmly. "You face the shame. You haven't faced the truth. You hurt someone who didn't deserve it. You humiliated someone who showed you nothing but grace." Nalia buried her face in her hands. "I know." "Then start fixing it," her friend whispered. "From the inside. Not to win him back, but to be better." By midnight, Nalia finally changed out of her dress. She placed it over a chair and stared at it for a long time. The dress she thought would symbolize the perfect beginning now symbolized the consequences of her arrogance. The following morning dawned gray. The sky clouded as if nature itself sensed the emotional storm still looming. Tendai woke up early, unable to stay in bed. He paced the living room, his chest tight with indecision. He thought about Naliath. Good moments, the laughter, the warmth she once offered. But then he thought about her words, the cruelty she showed his mother, and the balance tipped. At the same time, Nalia sat at her dining table, staring at a blank sheet of paper. Her mother insisted she write a letter to organize her thoughts, to express genuine remorse without panic clouding her words. She struggled for an hour before she finally wrote the first sentence. "I am not the woman I pretended to be." Once the dam broke, the words flowed raw, unfiltered, honest. By noon, fate brought them back together. Nalia arrived at Mama Rudo's house first, clutching the letter. Her parents waited in the car to give her privacy, but insisted on staying nearby in case things spiraled again. When Mama Rudo opened the door, Nalia immediately fell to her knees. "Mama Rudo," she whispered, "I'm here to ask again for your forgiveness, for your mercy, for your guidance." Mama Rudo knelt beside her, gently lifting her by the shoulders. "Stand, my daughter. Apology given in humility does not require kneeling." Nalia's tears flowed freely. "I hurt you," she cried. "I disrespected your love, your kindness, your dignity. I failed you." Mama Rudo wiped her tears softly with her thumb. "I forgive you, but forgiveness is not erasure, it is restoration. Restoration takes time." "I understand," Nalia whispered. Just then, Tendai arrived. He froze at the doorway, seeing the two women face to face, one broken, one steady, both changed. Nalia stood slowly. "Tendai," she whispered. He met her gaze. His expression was no longer angry, just tired, sad, searching. "We need to talk," he said. Nalia nodded. "I'm ready." He motioned toward the small garden outside. They walked together, the air heavy with unspoken truth. When they reached a wooden bench beneath a mango tree, Tendai sat down. Nalia sat beside him, hands clasped tightly. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Tendai inhaled shakily. "Tell me why." Nalia closed her eyes. "Because I was insecure, weak, afraid of not being enough. So I pretended to be more, and in pretending, I became cruel." He studied her expression, her trembling lip, her tear-streaked face, her vulnerability. "Do you love me?" he asked softly. "Yes," she whispered, "with everything in me." "Then why didn't you love who I came from?" She broke down again. "Because I didn't understand what real love meant." Tendai stared at the ground, heart torn between desire and hurt, between memory and truth, between love and fear. "Nalia," he said finally, voice low, "I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if we can rebuild what we had, but I see your remorse. I see your effort." She stared at him, breath trembling. "And that matters," he said. Her eyes widened with fragile hope. "But," he added softly, "I need time to heal." She nodded quickly. "Take all the time you need. I'll wait." Silence settled between them, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It wasn't suffocating. It was beginning. Not a perfect beginning, not a fairy tale beginning, but a human beginning. Behind them, Mama Rudo watched quietly from the doorway, hope returning to her weary eyes. For the first time in days, she smiled. Recovery would be slow, healing would be painful, trust would need rebuilding. But perhaps, just perhaps, the story wasn't over. Not yet. The days following the disastrous wedding reception unfolded with an emotional heaviness that neither family could escape. News traveled quickly through relatives and neighbors. Some felt sympathy for Tendai, others felt pity for Nalia, and many whispered prayers for Mama Rudo, who carried herself with a quiet grace, despite the emotional wounds still raw beneath her calm exterior. But for Tendai and Nalia, the days that followed were not filled with whispers, they were filled with silence, a suffocating silence, a silence that both feared to break, but knew could not last. Tendai spent most of his days working double shifts, throwing himself into his responsibilities at the office. It was easier than facing the tangle of emotions waiting for him at home. Every time he tried to process what had happened, he found himself getting caught between two truths. He still cared for Nalia, deeply, yet he still felt the sting of her disrespect, the humiliation she had poured onto his mother, and the arrogance she had shown so casually. Nalia, on the other hand, spent her days in self-imposed isolation. She couldn't bear the pity in her friends' eyes, or the judgment lingering in the voices of extended family who called to check on her. Her phone buzzed constantly, but she answered none of the calls, not even her closest friend, who had stood by her side through everything. She only spoke when necessary, mostly to her mother, who tried to comfort her without enabling her mistakes. Her father, stern but fair, kept his distance at first. But on the third day, he finally approached her while she was sitting on the balcony, staring into nothing. "Tell me what you've learned," he said simply, folding his arms as he stood behind her. Nalia blinked, her tear-swollen eyes uncertain. "Learned? Yes," he said. "You say you regret what happened, but regret without understanding leads nowhere. So tell me, what have you learned?" Nalia took a long, trembling breath. "That pride destroys," she whispered, "that words carry weight, that the way I treated Mama Rudo was unforgivable, that I became the worst version of myself, that I hurt the man I love." Her father nodded slowly. "Good, but knowing is not enough. Are you willing to change?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Or at least I want to." Her father placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "Then change. Not for appearance, not for Tendai, for you. Become the person you should have been long before this mess." His words planted seeds inside her, seeds that would grow only through action, consistency, humility. Later that evening, Nalia walked to her bedroom and pulled out a box she had hidden in the closet. Inside was the bracelet Mama Rudo had given her. She had avoided looking at it since the reception, too ashamed of how she had mocked it. But now she held it in her trembling hands, tears falling freely. "I don't deserve her kindness," she whispered to herself. But she didn't put the bracelet away this time. Instead, she wore it. Not because it matched her outfit or added to her appearance, but because she wanted to feel the weight of her mistake, literally every time she looked at her wrist. Meanwhile, Tendai found himself drawn back to his mother's home every evening. They would sit together, sometimes talking, sometimes silent, sometimes crying without shame. Their bond grew even stronger through the shared pain, hers from the disrespect she endured, his from the betrayal he witnessed. On the fifth night, after dinner, Mama Rudo finally spoke the words she had been holding inside. "My son," she said gently, "you cannot stay suspended between love and hurt forever. You must choose a direction not out of pressure, but out of conviction." "I know," Tendai replied, rubbing his forehead. "I'm just scared." "You're scared of making the wrong choice," she said. "But there is no perfect choice, only an honest one." He nodded slowly. "I need to see if she's truly changing," he murmured. "Not just apologizing, changing." "And you will," Mama Rudo said softly. "But only if you give her the opportunity to show you." He hesitated. "What if she fails again?" "Then you will know," she said, "and that knowledge will set you free." Her wisdom sank deep into him. He loved his mother's strength, her clarity of heart. He hoped quietly that maybe Nalia could one day learn from her. The following afternoon, Nalia mustered courage she did not know she had. She traveled alone to an unusual place, the open-air marketplace, where Mama Rudo sold vegetables every morning. She wore no makeup, no fancy dress, just a simple blouse and jeans. She didn't want to hide behind glamour. Not today. The market women recognized her instantly. Whispers rose around her like a wave. But instead of sneering or raising her chin in defiance, Nalia rushed to Mama Rudo's stall and bowed her head humbly. "Mama," she said softly, "may I help you today?" Mama Rudo looked surprised, genuinely startled, but then her eyes softened. "Of course," she said with a gentle smile. "There is space beside me." Nalia knelt down beside her in the dusty ground and began sorting tomatoes under Mama Rudo's instruction. She made mistakes, dropped some, got dirt on her clothes, but she didn't complain. She didn't laugh. She didn't care about the curious eyes of judgmental bystanders. She just worked. Hours passed. Sweat gathered on her forehead. Her knees ached. But she felt something she had never felt before. Humility and peace. Later, Mama Rudo touched her shoulder. "You did well, my daughter." Nalia burst into tears. "I want to be better, Mama. I want to deserve you. And Tendai." Mama Rudo hugged her gently. "Change takes time, but this is a start." Unbeknownst to both women, Tendai had arrived at the market seeking his mother for lunch. When he saw them sitting together, side by side, laughing softly, sorting vegetables, the sight hit him like a warm wave. He hid for a moment behind a stall, watching quietly. She came, she tried, she humbled herself. He felt something shift inside his chest. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was the beginning of hope. That evening, Tendai called Nalia for the first time since the reception. She answered on the first ring, breath trembling. "Tendai." He closed his eyes. "We need to talk." "Yes," she whispered. "Anytime, anywhere." "Can you meet me tomorrow?" he asked. "Yes," she said again, voice cracking. "I'll be there." He hung up, feeling a strange mixture of dread and anticipation. Tomorrow would be the day the future began to take shape, either together or apart. But for the first time in a long time, the path didn't feel hopeless. It felt possible. Tomorrow would decide everything. The morning of their meeting unfolded slowly, as though time itself held its breath. A muted sky lingered above Harare, neither bright nor gloomy, caught between light and shadow, just like the two people preparing to face one another. Tendai awoke early, long before dawn's blue softened into daylight. He showered mechanically, dressed simply, and stood for several minutes staring at his reflection. His face looked tired, but clearer than it had in days. Pain still lingered, but beneath it, something steadier was forming, resolve. Meanwhile, across the city, Nalia sat in her room, hugging her knees to her chest. She had barely slept. Her heartbeat felt too loud, too fragile. Every mistake she had made replayed in her mind with cruel clarity. She kept touching the bracelet on her wrist, the one Mama Rudo had gifted her, using its weight as a reminder of the woman she wanted to become. When her mother entered the room quietly, she found her daughter sitting on the floor, eyes swollen, hair unstyled, far from the polished woman she usually presented to the world. "You should eat something," her mother said gently. "I can't," Nalia whispered. "You need strength." "For what?" Nalia looked up, tears welling again. "What if he tells me he's done? What if I destroyed everything?" Her mother sighed, brushing a hand through Nalia's hair. "Then you accept it with dignity, but you also remember that healing yours, his, your relationships begins with honesty. Whatever happens today, face the truth bravely." Nalia nodded slowly, breathing shakily as she got up and dressed. She didn't apply much makeup, just enough to look awake. She didn't want to hide behind perfection again. Not today. Before leaving, her father approached her quietly. "Nalia," he said, "if you want to rebuild something broken, you must first rebuild yourself. Be humble, be sincere, and whatever Tendai decides, accept it gracefully." She nodded again, trying not to cry. Her parents drove her to the small cafe where she and Tendai had agreed to meet. She stepped out of the car alone. Her legs trembled, but she walked inside with cautious determination. Tendai was already there, seated at a corner table near the window. The light cast soft shadows on his face. He looked up when she entered, and for a moment, neither moved. Their eyes locked, his full of uncertainty, hers overflowing with remorse. Nalia approached slowly and sat across from him. Her fingers intertwined tightly in her lap. His rested flat on the table, steady but tense. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Tendai broke the silence. "You came to—" "I would have crawled here if I had to," she whispered. "Thank you for meeting me." He nodded slightly, his gaze flickering to the bracelet on her wrist. "You're wearing it." She touched it gently. "I wear it because I'm ashamed I ever mocked it, and because I want to remember the kind of woman I want to be." He didn't respond to that. "Not yet. I saw you at the market," he said suddenly. Her eyes widened. You did?" "Yes," he murmured. "You didn't know I was there." A small sob escaped her. "I wasn't doing it to impress you. I wasn't trying to show off. I needed to face what I'd done. I needed to understand the world I disrespected." He studied her carefully. "And did you understand?" "Yes," she whispered. "More than I expected. Your mother works harder than anyone I've ever met. She greets everyone with warmth, and she deserves so much more respect than I've ever given her." Tendai inhaled deeply, closing his eyes for a moment. "Why did you treat her like that, Nalia?" Her voice broke. "Because I was insecure. I wanted to feel superior. I thought looking down on someone made me strong, but it made me cruel. It made me stupid. It made me blind." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I wasn't raised to be that way," she added quietly. "My parents taught me better. But somewhere along the line, I confused confidence with arrogance, strength with dominance." She paused, struggling. "And I hurt people who never hurt me. Worst of all, I hurt your mother, who has done nothing but love you and wish you happiness." Tendai's jaw tightened. "You humiliated her, Nalia, repeatedly." "I know," she said, voice trembling, "and I don't deserve her forgiveness, or yours." He leaned back, rubbing his temples. "I don't understand how love could turn into that. Nalia looked down at her shaking hands. Love didn't do that. My pride did. Love was never the problem. I was. Silence blanketed them again, heavy, fragile, honest. After a long pause, Tendai spoke softly. My mother forgave you. Nalia nodded tearfully. I know. And that broke me even more. I don't know how she could. She forgave you because she believes in redemption, he said. Because she's that kind of woman. But forgiveness doesn't erase what happened between us. I know, Nalia whispered. What do you want from me? He asked quietly. She looked up, eyes raw and earnest. I want the chance to become better, to earn trust again, to repair what I broke. Not because I deserve it, but because I need to. Her voice cracked. I love you, Tendai, and I'll wait as long as it takes. His expression softened but didn't break. Love isn't enough, Nalia. Respect is the foundation of love. Without it, everything collapses. I understand that now, she said. He sighed deeply. This isn't just about us. It's about my mother, my family, the future we were supposed to build. Nalia wiped her tears. Then let me build myself first. Let me prove I can be the woman your mother prayed you'd find. He stared at her long and hard, searching for the truth beneath her words. Nalia, he said quietly, I haven't given up on us, but I can't jump back into this blindly. We're not ready. She nodded slowly. I understand. I need time, he continued. You need time. We both need healing and change. Nalia swallowed. So, what does that mean for us? Tendai reached out hesitantly and took her hand. She gasped at the contact. It means, he said slowly, we don't end today. Her breath caught. But we don't pretend everything is fixed either, he continued. We start over, from the ground up, as two people learning each other again, not as husband and wife forced into a broken beginning. A stunned silence enveloped her. Start over, she whispered, as if we're meeting for the first time. Yes, Tendai said gently, as friends, as people, not as roles in a ceremony. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I can do that. I want to do that. He squeezed her hand lightly. If you show consistent change, if you treat my mother with respect, if you face your flaws honestly, if you grow, then maybe one day we can talk about a future again. She nodded fiercely. I'll work every day, not to impress you, but to become someone worthy of the love I nearly destroyed. They sat together quietly, hands intertwined, souls raw but open. Outside the cafe window, the sun finally pierced through the gray clouds, light breaking through shadow. Maybe it was coincidence, maybe it was hope. Either way, something fragile but promising took root between them. Not reconciliation, not yet, but possibility. And possibility was enough. Over the next several weeks, life moved forward with a new, unfamiliar rhythm, slow, tentative, yet undeniably changed. Neither Tendai nor Nalia called themselves a couple anymore. They didn't meet with the intimacy of lovers or the obligation of husband and wife. Instead, they met like two people trying to rebuild something fragile, knowing one wrong word could shatter the foundation again. It was awkward at first, painfully awkward. Their conversations began with small talk, weather, work, errands, safe topics that asked nothing and revealed nothing. But beneath the surface of every word lingered the memory of wounds they were both trying to heal from. Nalia approached each meeting with a quiet humility that surprised many, especially those who had known her as the vibrant, commanding social butterfly. She didn't dress to impress anymore. She didn't speak loudly or boast of her lifestyle. She walked with an awareness she hadn't possessed before, as though every step was a reminder that she was rebuilding from the ashes of her own mistakes. And Tendai noticed. He noticed how she listened more than she spoke. He noticed how she apologized even for small things. He noticed the way she carried herself not with pride, but with intention. But he also noticed the fear in her eyes, the fear of losing him forever. And though he didn't want her to live afraid, he knew that fear was part of her growth, part of her transformation. Meanwhile, Mama Rudo watched from a respectful distance. She didn't insert herself into their journey, but she did offer wisdom where it was needed, conversations laced with gentleness rather than judgment. One afternoon, she invited Nalia over to her home, not to test her, but to talk. Nalia arrived with shaking hands, unsure of what to expect. She brought a small container of homemade stew, something she had learned to cook while helping at the market. Mama Rudo smiled warmly when she saw her. "My daughter," she said, "come in." Nalia entered timidly, the scent of herbs and wood smoke filling her senses. She placed the stew on the table and sat where Mama Rudo motioned. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Mama Rudo looked into her eyes and said softly, "You have been trying." Nalia's eyes filled with tears. "I want to be better for you, for him, for myself. I don't want to be the woman I was." "I see that," Mama Rudo murmured. "Growth is slow. It is not easy. But you have taken steps I did not expect." Nalia bowed her head. "Thank you for giving me a chance to show it." Mama Rudo reached across the table and took her hand. "It is not me who must be convinced. It is yourself. You cannot love others if you do not first examine the shadows in your own heart." Nalia nodded, tears falling silently. "I know." "And Tendai," Mama Rudo continued, "he is a man who loves deeply. But when deep love is wounded, the healing must also be deep." Nalia's voice shook. "Does he still love me?" Mama Rudo gave a gentle smile. "His heart is not closed, but he is guarding it, as he should." That conversation stayed with Nalia for days. She realized that this journey wasn't about convincing others she had changed. It was about changing because it was right, because the version of herself she had been was someone she no longer wanted to be. She began volunteering at the market more consistently. She donated clothes she no longer wore. She apologized to relatives from Tendai's side, not through messages or gifts, but in person, humbling herself each time. Some forgave quickly, others took longer. She accepted both with grace. But the transformation that surprised Tendai the most was how she treated her own household staff. One afternoon, when he stayed behind to help fix a broken window in her house, he overheard her speaking gently to the maid, helping her lift heavy items, thanking her sincerely for her work. The contrast was stark. It was not the Nalia he once knew, the woman who barely acknowledged the people who served her. Later, he confronted her gently. "You've changed how you treat people." She nodded. "I was raised with people serving around me. I never learned to see them. I'm ashamed of that. Seeing people," Tendai said, "is the beginning of respect." She smiled sadly. "I'm learning." As the weeks turned into months, the relationship between them grew, slowly, cautiously, but undeniably. They began having deeper conversations, not just about their lives, but about their fears, their childhoods, their insecurities. One evening, as they walked through a quiet park, Tendai stopped and faced her. "I want to trust you again," he said softly. "But trust cannot be rebuilt in silence. There are things I need to understand." She nodded immediately. "Ask me anything." "Why did you look down on my family?" he asked. Nalia inhaled deeply, gathering her courage. "Because I was trying to hide my own insecurity. My family might have money, but we have fractures. My parents fought constantly growing up. I always felt unwanted unless I was perfect. I thought being better than others kept me safe. Tendai listened intently. She continued, voice breaking. Your mother's love. It felt so pure, so different from what I knew. And it scared me. I didn't know how to receive that kind of love, so I attacked it. I'm so sorry. Tendai reached out and gently wiped a tear from her cheek. Honesty is a step forward, he whispered, but his next words were even more important. And so is forgiveness. Nalia's breath hitched. Does that mean? It means I'm healing, he said. It means we're healing. That night felt like a turning point, subtle but significant. But healing is not linear. A few days later, a confrontation erupted between Nalia and one of Tendai's cousins, who had been deeply hurt by what happened at the wedding. The cousin confronted her harshly at a family gathering. You think you can show up at the market and suddenly everything is forgiven? Nalia bowed her head. No, I don't expect forgiveness. I only hope to earn a chance to be part of this family. One day, if I'm worthy. Her humility disarmed the cousin completely. Later, the cousin pulled Tendai aside and whispered, She's different, truly. But not everyone was ready to forgive as quickly. One relative muttered loudly, People like her don't change. Tendai's jaw tightened. Then, perhaps you should watch more closely, he said firmly, because I see her changing every day. And he meant it. Still, he maintained emotional distance, not out of punishment, but out of caution. He refused to rush into rebuilding before they were both truly ready. One evening, after a long and emotional conversation, Nalia finally asked the question she had been terrified of for weeks. Tendai, do you think we'll ever be together again? He looked at her deeply, compassion shining in his eyes, but uncertainty lingering beneath. I think we might, he said slowly, but only if we rebuild on respect, only if your growth continues, only if my heart heals enough to trust again. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I'll wait, she whispered, and not with desperation, but with hope. He smiled softly. That's all I ask. But fate, as always, had more in store. Later that week, a sudden accident struck the market district. A delivery truck lost control and skidded across the stalls where Mama Rudo and others worked. Panic exploded, people screamed, items crashed. When Tendai heard the news, he raced to the market with his heart in his throat, and when he arrived, he saw something that stunned him. Nalia, covered in dust, with scraped hands and torn clothes, was kneeling beside Mama Rudo, shielding her from falling debris, shouting for help. She had been there when the truck swerved. She had thrown herself in front of Mama Rudo without thinking, without hesitation, protecting the woman she once disrespected. Tendai froze, breath stolen. Mama Rudo clung to Nalia's arm, eyes wide with shock and gratitude. You saved me, she whispered. Nalia shook her head, breath ragged. No, I did what any daughter would do, and something inside Tendai broke, not with pain, but with realization. This was not the same woman he had married. This was not the woman who whispered cruel words behind backs. This was someone humbled, grown, transformed, someone who risked her life for his mother, someone worthy. And as he ran toward them, heart pounding, tears burning his eye, she knew that the next chapter between them would not be built on brokenness, but on rebirth. Dust still hung in the air long after the truck had screeched to a halt. Shattered crates lay scattered across the market, fruits bruised and rolling underfoot as people scrambled to help each other. Shouts and cries filled the space, but Tendai heard none of it, not completely. All he could see was the sight of Nalia crouched protectively over his mother, her arms wrapped around Mama Rudo's shoulders, her own body serving as a shield. His heart hammered in his chest as he sprinted toward them, slipping twice on spilled vegetables. his breath ragged with fear. "Nalia, Mama!" Nalia looked up at the sound of his voice. Dirt streaked her cheeks. Her blouse was torn at the shoulder. Her hands shook from the adrenaline of what had just happened. But when her eyes met his, she forced a trembling smile. "She's okay," she whispered, still holding on to Mama Rudo, as though terrified to let go. Mama Rudo, shocked but conscious, leaned heavily into her chest rising and falling with sharp breaths. Tendai knelt beside them immediately. "Mama," he breathed, touching her face gently. "Are you hurt?" "No," she whispered, "just frightened. She pulled me out of the way." Nalia shook her head weakly. "I didn't think. I just reacted." "You saved her," Tendai said, voice cracking. For a moment the three of them remained entwined. An unlikely, fragile circle formed from shock, gratitude, and the lingering echoes of brokenness. Finally, a few market women rushed forward with water and cloths. "Let's help her stand," one offered. Tendai and Nalia worked together to lift Mama Rudo, supporting her carefully. Several vendors insisted she be taken to a nearby clinic for a checkup. Tendai agreed instantly, but Mama Rudo insisted on walking with her own strength. As they guided her toward the waiting taxi, Nalia slipped slightly. Tendai caught her by the elbow, steadying her. Their eyes met again, and this time, the connection between them wasn't tense or painful. It was soft, shaken, real. In the taxi, Tendai sat between the two women, one hand clasping his mother's, the other resting near Nalia's knee, close but not touching. His heart felt like it was being pulled in a dozen directions. Relief, fear, gratitude, and something deeper, something warm. When they reached the clinic, nurses led Mama Rudo inside. Tendai followed, but Nalia hesitated at the entrance as dust still coated her clothes. She caught sight of herself in the glass hair messy, face smeared, hands trembling, and for the first time, she didn't feel embarrassed by the lack of perfection. She felt human. She walked in a moment later, quiet, humble. Inside the examination room, a doctor declared that while Mama Rudo had minor bruises, she was otherwise unharmed. Tendai released a long breath of relief. When they stepped outside, the market community, having heard what Nalia did, gathered around her with murmurs of respect. "That girl saved her life. She's changed. She has courage." Nalia bowed her head, overwhelmed. Mama Rudo squeezed her hand gently. "You protected me," she said softly. "Why?" Nalia's throat tightened. Because you're my family," she whispered. "And I have failed you too many times already. I am done failing you." Tendai watched the exchange, his heart swelling with emotion he could no longer contain. He stepped closer, touching Nalia's wrist where the bracelet glimmered faintly beneath dust. "You didn't hesitate," he said quietly. Her eyes welled up. "I couldn't. I won't ever hesitate again when it comes to you or your mother." For the first time in months, Tendai reached out and pulled her into a tight embrace. Nalia gasped softly, her hands rising uncertainly, before finally resting against his back. He held her as though she was something fragile, yet irreplaceable. She held him as though afraid he might slip away. After a long moment, Tendai pulled back, brushing dirt from her cheek. "Nalia," he said softly, "I see you, the real you, the you who fights, the you who protects, the you who is learning." Tears streamed down her face. "And do you still love me?" He cupped her face gently. "I never stopped." She broke down completely, burying her face in his chest as Mama Rudo watched, tears shining in her eyes. But Tendai wasn't finished. He stepped back and took both women's hands, leading them to a bench. The sun had broken through the clouds by now, casting warm light over the three of them. "Listen," he began, voice steady. "We have been through a storm. We have been broken. We have seen the worst in each other. Nalia nodded, wiping her face. But today, I saw your heart, not the one shaped by pride or fear, but your true heart, and that heart is worth fighting for. Her breath trembled. But, he continued gently, we cannot pretend the past didn't happen. We cannot erase the pain with one heroic act. I know, she whispered. We must rebuild from the beginning, he said, as people who choose each other not out of obligation or ego, but out of understanding. Nalia nodded fiercely. I want that. I will earn everything back. Your trust, your mother's trust, our future. Slowly, he reminded. Yes, she whispered. Slowly. Then, unexpectedly, Mama Rudo reached out and placed Nalia's hand into Tendai's. My son, she said softly, love that survives truth is stronger than love built on illusions. Nalia's breath hitched. Mama Rudo turned to her. My daughter, you have shown courage. You have shown humility, not just in words, but in actions. If you continue this path, you will be someone worthy not because of clothing or wealth or beauty, but because your heart has grown. Nalia covered her mouth, overwhelmed with gratitude and disbelief. And as for us, Mama Rudo added warmly, I accept you not because you married my son, but because you are trying to become family. Nalia could no longer contain her emotion. She hugged Mama Rudo tightly, crying into her shoulder like a child seeking comfort. And Mama Rudo embraced her back fully, without reservation. Tendai stood beside them, feeling the weight of months of pain melt slowly, carefully into a blossoming hope. Later that day, after making sure Mama Rudo was settled and safe, Tendai walked Nalia to her car. Before she entered, he held her hand once more. Nalia, he said softly, I want to meet with you again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. She smiled through tears. As friends? As two people building towards something real, he corrected. She nodded. And Nalia, he added, yes, when the time is right, we will redo our vows, properly, honestly, not the wedding we had before. Her heart stopped, but only when we are both ready. A smile broke over her face, small, gentle, but full of fragile hope. I'll wait, she whispered, and I'll earn it. He leaned forward and kissed her forehead. A promise, not a reunion, a beginning. As she drove away, sun setting behind her, Tendai watched the fading image of the woman who had once hurt him deeply, but who had also chosen to grow, to fight, to transform. And for the first time since the disastrous wedding, he knew the truth. The past had broken them, but the future, carefully, slowly, could build something stronger, something real, something worth waiting for. In life, the sharpest wounds often come not from strangers, but from those closest to us, through words spoken carelessly, pride worn like armor, and insecurities disguised as superiority. But true strength does not come from standing above others. It comes from humbling ourselves enough to recognize our flaws and choosing to grow beyond them. Nalia learned that redemption is not a gift, it is a journey. Tendai learned that forgiveness is not forgetting, but allowing space for transformation. And Mama Rudo reminded us that love rooted in grace can heal wounds deeper than pride. Relationships survive not because people are perfect, but because they are willing to confront their imperfections with sincerity and courage. If this story touched your heart, share where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you enjoy emotional African folktale dramas filled with life lessons, feel free to subscribe for more.